listening to Over the Oxo podcast with Tracey Cole for all things to do with the mind for equestrians. So this week I am really delighted to welcome Jackie McCormick. Jackie is going to be so fascinating as a guest because she's been working in an organisation that she actually set up herself, and this provides support services for adults and their families and carers with the diagnosis of autism. And she's also a solution-focused therapist and hypnotherapist, a Centre 10 coach, and so she works within the equine community as well. So a very warm welcome, Jackie.
It's a big hat. It's a very big hat that I'm wearing.
It's lots of hats, isn't it?
Yes, it's lots of hats. Yes, yeah.
Could you start by telling us a little bit about your background and what led you to work in the field of autism and neurodiversity?
Yes, of course. But first of all, thank you for having me on. It's very kind of you. So when I was 11, 12, I received a diagnosis myself of what in those days was called being maladjusted, which is a very negative term. However, it was all good because it kind of enabled me to get the right support and the right services. And I went and lived in a residential school for women, young girls, for a few years. So that was really positive, and that led me to thinking I'd quite like to do something within the care industry. So I went off and did a college course, and then I worked with individuals with learning disability for a few years, and then kind of stumbled across autism like nearly 40 years ago. And of course, in those days, we were just learning about this condition. And so very quickly, I kind of got quite fascinated by it and interested, and went on to study at Birmingham University, and kind of led me to setting up a charity. I'd worked for an organisation for people with autism and convinced a group of the parents to basically set up another charity. So we set our own services up. And in those days, the term Asperger syndrome was just being used. And those were the individuals that I was particularly interested in, because I felt that they really weren't getting the right support and knowledge about their condition. So I set up the charity. Charity is still running, and it runs services for adults with autism, in brackets what was known as Asperger syndrome. So nowadays it would be regarded as sort of high functioning autism. However, those individuals throughout life have experienced quite severe mental health issues. Some have worked, some have been to university, etc., etc. So I have residential services and a big team of staff that support those individuals. So that's very briefly how I got into autism. And I just find it still now, I'm not an expert, but I have a lot of knowledge and experience, and still find it absolutely fascinating. But the one thing I do want to say on top of that is what we have nowadays is everybody often will say, well, everybody's got a touch of autism, haven't they? And that drives me bonkers because it's disrespectful. And I know people don't mean it that way, but to have the diagnosis of autism or to be working towards the diagnosis of autism and ADHD is a tough road to walk, and it can present so many challenges. And no, not everybody has autism. You may have some characteristics or behaviours that we can say, well, that's similar to somebody with autism. So you might be obsessional, or you might like routine, but that's one or two. And to actually live with autism can be incredibly challenging. It can also be very positive, but I just think it's good to get that out there straight away, that no, not everybody has autism or ADHD.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard lots and lots of people say that. Well, aren't we all neurodiverse in some way? And that's just answered that question. And we can all show various traits, can't we, of different kind of neurodivergence, but not necessarily have some kind of condition.
Absolutely. And just to say again, if people are listening to this, I don't often use the word neurodivergent or neurodivergence, mainly because I've been in the world of autism for 40 years
Yeah.
and we use the word autism. And I can go on to, and I won't bore you, but I can go on to talk about the political concerns that we sometimes have when we clump everybody in together.
Yeah.
Because my belief is that individuals with autism and ADHD need the recognition that their difficulties or, challenges are quite specific. And it's really important that we respect that. So if you broke a bone, you want to go and see a specialist. Or if you have a heart issue, you want to see a heart specialist. That's not to say I don't ever use it. Of course I do. But just for this, that I do keep saying autism, and I'm not being disrespectful, or it's just that it's kind of where I've come from, really.
Yeah, that's an important point that you make, and within autism itself, or ADHD, or anything else, the spectrum of behaviours and the spectrum of what people find challenging is very wide, isn't it?
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge, and it varies. So from being a child, you can move around on the spectrum. You're not just kind of. It could be that in my day it would be we talked about being classically can as autistic. So that would be somebody with an IQ below 75, wouldn't necessarily have the use of reciprocal language. But of course, it's much more fluid than that. And people can, there are some youngsters like Dr. Temple Grandin, when she was a child, a lady with autism, she didn't speak. So she would have been classified as severely autistic in those days. But of course, she's gone on to she's written books and she works with animals and she's incredible and gives talks. So we have to be careful that, people can move around on. And depending on what's going on in your life, particularly with ADHD and stuff, depending on the levels of stress and anxiety and reading the world around you, can cause you to present maybe as though you are more disabled than in fact you are, because you are masking or you're trying to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So it's a way of kind of protection for some as well, that
Yeah.
they may present as much more disabled in a way.
And so you've kind of touched on this, but how has the understanding of autism changed since you began?
Oh, hugely. And it's
I bet.
wonderful. I love it. And I love kind of reading and listening to, all the sort of younger people that are coming up and coming through. And because it's much more acceptable nowadays that we're talking about it, and that's great. I do have a slight concern sometimes that for a lot of the individuals I work with, that they may be married, they may have a job, they may be functioning in society in that respect, but they may say to me, I do not have a superpower. And at the moment, there seems to be and I get that, because individuals with autism and ADHD do have incredible skills, or can have. They may not, though. And so it's important that generally as society, not everybody with autism has a superpower, because that can cause huge stress and anxiety as well, and deflation. Well, that's not me. I haven't got those skills. And also I don't want them. It's that sort of thing, because that means I have to kind of maybe interact with people more, and I don't want to. So, I kind of get that as well. So I think the awareness is so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Provision of services, no, sadly,
Okay.
is kind of decreasing because funding. That's very sad. Very, very sad. And I'm seeing a huge deficit in services. And diagnosis. We know it's really hard for families, with their children and or adults, to go through the system of trying to get a diagnosis because of essentially lack of funding.
Yeah.
But awareness is so much better. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. And so do you think it's across the board that the funding is lacking, or is it more in the adult sector or more in the children's sector?
And I mentioned this to you earlier, because I work in the adult sector. Individuals are adults much longer than they are children. Sometimes that gets forgotten.
Mm.
So there is more funding that goes into education and early intervention, which is important. We all recognise that. We respect that. That's important. But unfortunately, funding can then stop at 25 in the education system. If you're in the specialist system, obviously at 18 it could stop. Then what? Then and also if you're an adult that you're kind of thinking, do you know what? I think I've probably got autism. All this stuff that I'm seeing on social media, that's me. Where do I go? Where's the funding for me for support? So that either has to come out of their own pocket, and on average to get a diagnosis nowadays, you're looking at around £2,500.
Wow.
£2,000, that's a lot of money privately.
Yeah.
And then the waiting lists also can be huge. So, and certainly running adult services, there's a terrible deficit in funding.
Yeah.
Understandably, I get that because society is struggling and it's where do we put the funding? What we also have to recognise is that autism and ADHD, they're a lifelong condition. It's not take a tablet and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's not kind of, we don't want to say there's no cure because that is quite, again, that's an awful thing about, we've got to get rid of it. That's dreadful. And what's happening in America, I have to say, it's quite worrying when we talk about that certain things could cause autism, like paracetamol and, that sort of thing that can put people into real distress. But yes, the funding, unfortunately, has been cut enormously.
Yeah.
And to run a good service and to provide good, whether it's, whether you're running a yard, an equestrian yard, and you are welcoming neurodiverse people in, you've still got to have funding because my personal belief is that you should have real knowledge when you're working with autism and ADHD because these individuals, their brains work differently. So we have to respect that and learn that. And, just be quite mindful of what we're dealing with. And that costs money.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
And just kind of moving on slightly, but I'll keep on the autism theme. You're a solution-focused therapist, you're a hypnotherapist. How did these approaches complement your work with autistic people?
Well, I set that business up to not work with people with autism.
Oh, okay. Right.
Mainly because I thought, do you know what? I'm going to do something different.
Yeah.
And so I went off and trained, around the solution focused therapy. And of course, I love it because it's all based around neuroscience and the brain. And I'm absolutely kind of a bit geeky, probably a bit like yourself. But so originally that's why I did that. But then, of course, because you're known, I'm known in the world of autism a bit, quite a bit, word of mouth, and people come to you. So what I've done recently is also set up a sort of an offshoot, really, where, because I do autism consultancy, I don't diagnose, but working with individuals. So I've set that up separately because the solution-focused approach, yes, it does work very well because, of course, it's very literal and very logical. It's not fluff.
Yeah.
It's just So the individuals that have come to me for therapy, they love my approach because they say it makes sense. And you don't keep asking me how I feel.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be asked that. It's just, and I'm not, with the solution focused approach, you're not giving solutions, you're supporting the individual. But I do help. If an individual with autism comes to me, I do actually add in a bit of my autism knowledge, and I'll talk about, actually, do you know what? Routines are really good for you. Schedules are really good for you. How can we get you to do that? So it does work in some ways, but yeah, originally I set it up to just do something different.
Oh, great.
I know. No.
And so you dip into the equine world and the equestrian world through your hypnotherapy and through your Centre 10 training.
Yes.
So I suppose if somebody is an equestrian professional, like you mentioned previously, they're working on a yard or they own a yard, how can they better support autistic or any kind of neurodiverse riders or clients or colleagues? What's the best approach?
I mean, the first thing is if the individual is willing to tell you.
Mm.
And most individuals that I support, and I've also been in the equine. My kids have had horses all their lives, and I've ridden a little bit. So it's if the individual is willing to tell you. That's the important thing. Now, I do know a lot of coaches that obviously come to me sometimes and say, I think I've got a client who is probably autistic or probably has ADHD.
Yeah.
The first thing is to respect it, is to go, okay, they've given me some information about themselves that maybe I need to explore. And there is a world of information out there. I would always say, don't think you know it because you've seen a little bit on social media, but just maybe go off and explore it. But also ask yourself very honestly, are you willing to learn about this? And are you willing to support somebody that may be neurodiverse?
Yeah.
Because it's a two-way thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because for some individuals, it can be really scary because I don't know anything about this. And you may have an individual with autism who may come across as very blunt and quite rude. They're not being, it's the way the brain is kind of processing information. And also will struggle with sensory kind of stuff going on, sensory overload. And so I would say be open to it, but also you don't have to work with everybody, just as we don't as therapists.
Yeah.
No, I think we have to be honest sometimes and say, that's not my area. I really don't think I can do that. Or can I find somebody that could support me in working with that individual and gaining more information? And or talk to the individual. What do you need? What helps you to concentrate better? You know, don't think you know autism because you've read a little bit. The individual, they may not know their autism completely, but a lot of them will. Certainly people with ADHD will. So they're going to be the best encyclopedia of what they need, hopefully. Not always. And or their parents that are going to be there, maybe supporting them. So ask, what do you need from me? What can I help you with? Scan the environment. If the individual says, oh, I don't like loud noises, maybe book their session when it's quieter. Don't maybe for the individual talk to them about group activities. Do they find that difficult to be able to tune into more than one person?
Yeah.
And there's lots. I mean, I could talk for hours about that, but yeah, simply it's ask the question and seek advice, really.
Yeah. And how often do you combine your autism knowledge and the equestrian knowledge? How often do you put them together?
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, I think, again, through word of mouth, people have come to me through the equine side, Centre 10 side, Centre 10 training. And if it's prior to competition, like anybody, lots of people experience nerves. But I had a young lady that came to me and basically she's a dressage rider.
Yeah.
Very good dressage rider. Rides for the county in Pony Club. Anyway, so the issue there was not really understanding why she came second.
Okay.
Because of course she's a perfectionist, quite rightly so, which is wonderful. That is a strength in when you're doing dressage.
Yeah.
It's a good skill to have. And I think she was like half a point from winning or something like that. And so for her, it was really difficult to process why, logically, literally, could not let go of that fact that she came second. So my job was to help her to understand the strategies that she could use when she's in that state of, this is not right. I have to keep going over and recounting the scores and doing, to relax her brain, to calm her brain down, using the things that she normally would use, like watching dressage videos or, whatever it was, to help her mind to go, I can calm down. Then I can accept the result. And to also do some other bits and bobs that I kind of helped her with, recognizing what her brain was probably doing to her in that moment, because she was anxious, therefore it was going the same loop and not. Now, she is a very interesting individual in that when she was talking to me about the riding, and if you don't know about autism necessarily, this is where it blows your brain a bit. So she's ridden all her life, this individual. And I was able to say to her, what part of riding do you like? What is it about riding that you like? Well, of course, she likes the riding, the getting on, doing it, and being very good. She's not into all the grooming and the caring and the loving the horse. Now, some people might find that really difficult because, you know, we all love our horses, don't we? And we turn them into human beings and what's the word? We anthropomorph. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. But she doesn't. And she said, oh, no, I'm not into all that. And I said, no, I can see that you're not. And that's fine. I wasn't going to say, oh, yeah, but it's really important that you spend time with your animals and you love them and you care for them. To her, in her lovely, wonderful, literal, logical mind, it is about the riding.
Yeah.
But what she will struggle with is other people's opinion about that. Because she's an incredibly articulate individual. And that's the difficulty again with autism and ADHD. We used to always call it the hidden disability because you can't necessarily see it, can we?
Yeah.
And then we think people are being odd and weird and doing it on purpose. They know what they're doing. They're being, and a lot of mums, particularly mums, would get that. Just sort him out. He knows what he's doing. He's getting away with it, type thing. And that's hard for all of us sometimes because our brains have got this ability to kind of reason. But you know, she had this. But for her, that was actually caused an awful lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, no amount of sitting down with her and saying, "Now come." No, you don't win all the time, and you must. That would have caused her more anxiety, more pressure, and then she would have probably told you to off. Quite rightly so. But you know what she needed then was a strategy to be able to manage what her brain was doing to her at that moment. So she then went on to you know, I think she wins quite a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautifully focused.
Super.
Doesn't worry what people think in the arena.
So she has got a superpower in that way.
In that respect, she can block that off because it doesn't matter to her necessarily in that moment. Yeah.
Do you think that horses are particularly beneficial for autistic people? Do they help people to manage the sensory side of autism or the emotional or the communication aspects?
The most important thing here is, as I always say, not everybody with autism will want to be near horses and like horses. So we have to be careful that we don't rush out to book everybody riding lessons. However, for some individuals with autism and ADHD, it has this incredible calming effect. And like you quite rightly said, they can tune in because it's not a human being talking all the time. That's one very simple thing.
Yeah.
The horse doesn't talk at you all the time and expect a response from you. So they can just be with the horse. And then there will be a sensory thing that it's, you know, there'll be a chemical reaction in the brain, the oxytocin, you know, that wonderful, I feel safe. This is my kind of, you know, tribe or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Smells, of course. It may be that the smells are comforting. For other individuals with autism, it could be the opposite. So we have to be careful with that one. But the individuals I know that work with horses, when they're on their horse, they will say to me, I can just be me.
Oh.
And isn't that a great place to be?
That's wonderful.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that's wonderful for anyone, isn't it?
Isn't it? And they don't have to wear their makeup. And they don't, you know, they can just be me and feel safe, because that's one of the most important things, is to feel safe in our chaotic society. What they might not do is get involved in the social aspect of a yard. They might not want to sit and drink coffee and chat with people about Fred's leg, or whatever it is that's going on. Oh, he's lame again. Oh
Yeah,
gosh, what
yeah,
you need to
yeah,
do is, they may not want to get involved in that. Of course they may, and that's great. But if it's recognizing that if an individual is at your yard that may have autism and or ADHD, they may just want to be with their horse. They may tack up in private because that's peace and quiet and calm, and just get on with their beautiful routine.
yeah, yeah.
This is what you do, this, and they'll have a routine and a schedule of doing it. Slightly different with ADHD, because what you might experience is that they always run late. Maybe they forget timings, they forget that the competition is at such and such, and they'll be running late. Might appear fairly chaotic. But then again, I know one particular individual, young woman, and her horse is everything for her. He just provides calmness, although he can be really naughty. Well, not naughty, because horses aren't really naughty, but he can
Yeah.
throw in some good moves sometimes.
Yeah.
But she loves that because it gives her control as well.
Yeah.
And for her, it just, so if she's got other stuff going on where her stress bucket is really full and overflowing, the best place for her to be is with a horse.
Lovely.
Isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is something that I wonder about, but you may or may not have an answer, and there may not be an answer, but the way that horses respond to people who have autism, do you think horses respond any differently?
I don't know for sure because I haven't done a study on it or any research, but from anecdotal evidence, which is me, kind of being around people, yeah, I think they're calmer maybe, or maybe because the person is just very matter of fact and logical, and they're not fussy around the horse.
Yeah.
So the horse therefore responds in a very literal, logical, in a very kind of calm way, because then a horse is not, oh God, that person's really stressed today because they're like, oh. I don't know, but and I'm sure of course, there are going to be times when the horse, because of what the horse is experiencing, maybe pain or, something else, that they can't remain calm. But actually, he's a gentleman that lives in my service, and he comes across as very autistic and chooses to not really communicate with people. But he can. He's got use of reciprocal language, but he chooses not to because people stress him out. So he loves riding. And I took him on holiday many years ago. We went on a riding on a hack. And this individual is very upright, and he sits upright, and everything's very ordered, And we're on this hack, and he's got a beautiful trot because it's, he knows exactly what to do. Anyway, we went through this tunnel of trees, and the branches were down low. So, of course, I was on this, whatever I was on, and I ducked. Because naturally my brain tells me, and I can imagine what's going to happen. Bless him, he didn't. And he just went through, because when you're being told to trot, you trot. So he trotted through. When you're told to sit up straight and put your heels down, that's what you do, for him anyway. And I kind of went through, and I looked behind, and there he was going through these twigs, and they were just whacking him in the face. And I was like, are you okay? Yes, Jackie, I'm fine. And it was beautiful. It wasn't beautiful for him, but it was a beautiful example of how in that moment, the riding instructor might have thought, for goodness sake, man, what's the matter with you?
Yeah.
Duck.
Yeah.
But of course, he was told to sit upright and to, and he got hit in the face because he was, and he still enjoyed his hack, and he was fine.
Yeah.
But we didn't give him the right instructions.
Yeah.
So it wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
But you can see, to look at this individual, you think, well, he's fine. What's wrong with him? He's a very smart, intelligent man. He didn't get the right instructions.
Yeah. Yeah. So for parents or for riders who are or coaches who are maybe supporting somebody with autism, that's something key to understand, isn't it, about the individuals?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what small steps do you think they could take maybe to make the riding more enjoyable for the autistic client or friend?
I think depending on the individual, obviously, always, and everyone's different. We say that all the time. However, sometimes, we need to maybe take control a little bit more, but not in a bossy way, in a making the environment safe for the individual to come into. So clear instructions, being prepared, helping them to be prepared, getting them organized before the lesson or whatever it is. Have you got such yes, I have, or helping them to be, particularly with ADHD, that's really important. Don't necessarily expect them to get it all ready themselves. If it makes it easier for them, do it for them, because then they can approach the lesson in a much calmer, controlled way. For the coach, very clear instructions, but don't talk at them all the time.
Yeah.
Give space. Clear instructions, but just don't go, did you hear me? Particularly with autism, and I think also for some individuals with ADHD, executive functioning can be quite complex. So that's the way our brain processes information. So if we're giving instructions, we need to allow time for processing. Because for some individuals, even if they're a professor in statistics or something else, they still need time to process. It might be like transferring it from a foreign language. And this is where the word masking comes in, that many individuals have masked for many, many years. They make us think that they've understood us because they've learned how to get us to shut up, basically, which is good. So I would always say, take a breath. Now, you've ridden, haven't you, for many, many years? You ride, you've got horses. We've all had lessons, and sometimes not on purpose, but the instructor just constantly talks at us.
Yeah.
And we struggle to, what did you say about my left leg? What, the inside rein? What, which one's that? So particularly for people with autism and people with ADHD, if their brain's running off somewhere else, thinking of something else that they're doing later on, be succinct in your language. Try not to use too much fluff, and use one or two words even, and then shut up.
Great advice. I love it.
Just don't have to fill the space. Silence is good sometimes.
And I think modern coaching is like that now, isn't it? They're not instructing you every single step of the way. Because I've had instructors way back in the past that did that, and it was almost like they were riding the horse. I was just doing the motions. I was doing everything they said, and it all turned out really well until that instructor wasn't there. So I think nowadays equestrian coaches even, that they know, they almost give you a short instruction so that not that you can fail, but that you can find out what works for you a little bit. And then you can come back and say, well, how was that for you? And, did that work, or what do you think could improve it? So I think they are getting a little bit on board, generally speaking, and it probably will also benefit the autistic riders as well.
Absolutely. And I think many individuals that I work with, and I have over the 40 odd years, what they do struggle with is if we say, no, you didn't do that right. No, the word no, actually, we try to not use it, which is very hard for neurotypical beings, because we use it a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's a word that many individuals that I know with autism really struggle with. Can't make sense of that, because it's not that they're always right. Although I do work with some people say, yes, I am. Because logically they are,
Mm,
they
they
really
are.
are. But you've got to be with autism a lot to really accept that and get that and think, well, actually, they are right. Yeah, they are. Which is, yeah, it is. It's lovely.
That's great. What message then would you love listeners to take away about autism or about neurodiversity? Whether they're riders or parents or professionals, what would be your central message to them?
It's there. It's real. It is in our society. We're talking around, for autism particularly, 1 in 100, if not more, because that's the people we know about.
Hmm.
It is lifelong, and not everybody has a superpower. I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, yeah,
Because I suppose I work with lots of individuals that feel that they don't have a superpower and that they are experiencing severe depression and they find life really quite challenging. And a lot of parents are finding life with their autistic child or adult very difficult and challenging.
yeah,
And I think we also have to recognize that and respect that.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. That has opened a little window into the world of autism. I know it's a vast subject, and maybe you need to come back and tell us a bit more about it at another time. Where can listeners find out more about you and your work and the support that you offer?
Well, if it's to do with my service, we are called Gloucestershire Group Homes. We are based in beautiful little town in Nailsworth and Minchinhampton in the Cotswolds. And so I'm actually just putting up our new website on, redesigning our website. But I can always put a phone number on for that. For me personally, I'm on Instagram as for the autism and the ADHD kind of support. It's Jackie McCormick, autism ADHD consultant or consultancy. And then my solution focused work I think it's JMC solution focused therapy or coach on Instagram and Facebook. And I have a website like we all do. So I'm out there. So just put my name in Google, maybe.
Yeah.
it would just come out.
I'll
But
put
yeah.
all your details in the description box as well, so people can look you up and they can find out where you are and what you do in more detail. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I
Well,
found
no,
it
thank
fascinating.
you. No, thank you. As I said, I do talk a lot, so I do apologise.
No, that was really good because I wanted to hear about it and I wanted you to be able to say what you wanted to say rather than me give you lots and lots of short little questions. It's so nice that you got out what you needed to say and gave us a really good flavour of what's going on in autistic people's brains.
Thank you.